Discontinued Roads Commission. Both Tom and I presented our own organizations, and there were a number of questions. And towards the end, each of us was asked about ADROC and Discontinued Roads Commission. And I call it ADROC, it's just easier. Anyway, we're both asked about what they were doing and what their progress was. And one of the people, I can't remember now which of the legislators it was, but one of them asked, do the members of the commission get paid? Or I think they phrased it something like, you do get paid, don't you? And I went, so that might be something we want to bring up with them. Apparently somebody on the commission, on the state and local committee has the idea that we ought to be getting paid. So I think that opens the door for us to say, could we at least get reimbursement for mileage? Because right at the moment, I don't think any of us gets much of anything.
Yeah, luckily we're doing these remotely, so we don't worry about mileage so much. But in our early days, when we were all getting together on a regular basis, we individually racked up a bit of a bill, and we've not seen anything other than money that goes for the website. I think, is that a fair statement, Heather?
Well, actually, we didn't have to pay anything for the website because I got that for free.
Okay.
But
the $500 a year.
We did have to pay. It was $500 for the reports because we had to print out 30 for all of the different groups. I think it was it 30 or is it? I can't remember the exact total, but it was over 30 that we had to print out
So
for all
we're
the
paying
different
for
committees. Yeah, we are.
Okay, that's okay. So the $500 a year that we get has been going to publish, so the state is getting the money back.
Yep.
All right, I like that. Okay, so yeah, I think it's fair to ask for per diem for people or something, to the extent that money comes out of our own pockets to be part of this commission, that we ought to be able to get that back. So that's what I propose for doing that report to the commission. Does that sound okay with everybody? I don't want to step on toes or leave anybody out.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Can you tell me the date of the hearing next week at S&T, state and local, I mean?
That is next Thursday at 1:30, I believe. Is that correct, Heather?
Yeah, it's wait, hold on. No, I think it's Wednesday at 1.
Okay, Wednesday the 16th at 1, okay.
Yeah, because the 16th is Wednesday.
Yep. Okay, 1 p.m. at SLG. All right. So if any of you would like to attend and provide your own take on that's certainly, I don't want to exclude anybody. You're welcome. And I believe you could participate remotely in that as well as be present. Is that true, Heather? Or
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That is true. I think you have to register ahead of time to participate remotely.
But you do not have to be present to win. So there you go. You could participate remotely. I will plan to attend in person given the circumstances. So
if anybody wants to attend remotely, the process is you go on the legislative website and there's a place where it says submit testimony. And one of the options there is to participate remotely.
Okay. So with that then, any commissioner who wants to participate, and talk about the report, what the work that we've done, the legislation that we're proposing, you're certainly welcome. I don't mean to be leaving anybody out. Just as chair, I thought it was my responsibility to go out there and present the report and the overview and take the questions directly. I understand that I've been asked if I would stick around for a little bit because there are questions about LD 928. So let's shift gears and talk about discussion on legislation. I've seen the bill. I've read it. It's a little odd to me. You've all gotten a copy of LD 928 in preparation for today's meeting. And the idea is that if if the public easement has been retained for at least 15 years, then no one can gate. Not the municipality, not the county commissioners, not an abutter, may not gate, bar, or otherwise obstruct the town way. I'm stunned because if there's a, as we've talked about so many times, if there's a public easement, the public has a right to pass over that way. And the town or the county would have the right to make sure that the public can exercise that right. You don't have to wait 15 years to go down there and tell someone to take down an obstruction of a public easement. So, I understand it's sort of like an adverse possession kind of time thing, but it isn't necessary. There's already an ability on the part of the town, the city, or the county commissioners to go out there and say, tear down that barrier. It's a public easement. The public has a right to pass. Or if you're going to put up a gate with a lock, give everyone a key. They all have the right to go by.
Did everyone get the email that I sent out with some background information on that?
That's what, if you could, yeah, there's always a story behind one of these, and Roberta has done some research on it and sent an email around to us. And I don't know if Pete's had an opportunity to look at this as well, because it's a road that I understand is shown on the map viewer. But Roberta, if you could start us out, what did you learn about this?
Well, I first heard about this road from the person who has the gate up, and he was trying to find out whether the road was discontinued or not, because when he bought the property, he was told by one of the town officials that the road was discontinued. And he took that to mean that he owned the road. He owns property on both sides of it, and therefore he thought he was in the right to put up a gate. And I was starting to do research on it, but at one point I sent him an email and I never heard back from him again. So I don't know if he didn't like the direction it was going, or if my email ended up in his junk mailbox or what. But with everything else I was doing, I'm afraid I kind of lost him through the cracks. And then the next thing I heard was this bill came up, and I thought, that's interesting. I wonder what road they're having a problem with. So I went to the hearing. I tried to get in touch with the legislator who had presented it and didn't get any response from him. So I went to the hearing, and lo and behold, it's the other people on that road who are saying they don't want the gate there. Apparently there's a piece of town-owned land in beyond where the gate is that was given to the town by the federal government with the stipulation that it was always to be used for public purposes. And so then the question is, how can the public get there if there's a gate up? Meanwhile, what I found out in the research was that it had been a county road. There is no evidence that the county ever discontinued it. And there was some evidence that the person of the gate had dug up that he was told it was discontinued in the 1930s, which, if that was true, would have meant that there was no easement. However, if the town tried to discontinue it in the 1930s, it wasn't in their jurisdiction because it was a county road. So they couldn't have legally discontinued it without going to the county. And then the people that I was talking to more recently said that there were apparently several attempts to discontinue it in the 1930s, but they didn't have the result of the votes. And when something keeps coming back like that, usually what I see is one of two things. Either they tried to discontinue it and the people said no, they didn't want it discontinued, and they kept trying again, the people kept saying no. Or they tried to discontinue it and then realized, oh, we can't because it's not our road, it's the county's road. So either way, it probably didn't get discontinued. There was also some indication that maybe what they were asking for was a winter closing, not a discontinuance. But in any case, it appears that it remained a town way, or it remained a county way until 1976, when all county ways and organized townships became townways. And the town has not discontinued it recently. So it probably qualifies for statutory abandonment, which would mean there's a public easement. So that's my assumption on it.
But you also are right that the town has decided to take the road by eminent domain.
Yes, that's the other thing that happened is that I think within a few days after the public hearing on the bill, the town had their annual meeting, and one of the articles on the warrant was to see if the town would vote to appropriate funds to take it by eminent domain, and they voted in favor of it. There's one point during the hearing, I was able to listen to the recording of it afterwards. And there was one point where someone said, well, if it's going to become a public road, the public ought to maintain it. And that was met with applause, which I thought was very interesting because usually that's what will keep a town from voting to take over a road because they don't want the expense. But I think if nothing else, this gives us an opportunity to look at whether gates and bars are a good idea or not. And I think that they could solve or at least mitigate a lot of the problems that we've seen. One of the big complaints that we see is that the public comes in and tears up the road, and the landowner has no way to tell them that they can't or that they shouldn't, or it's mud season or anything else. They just have to let the public run rampant on the road, and that does a lot of damage. If there could be unlocked gates, then that could mitigate some of that. It also would mitigate the problems of trash dumping, vandalism, some of those other complaints that we hear. If it's an unlocked gate, it's not going to stop everybody, but at least it might slow some of them down. And that I think would be a help. Also, if you can slow down that abuse of the road, you slow down the environmental damage of runoff going into streams and lakes. And you also might mitigate the problem of where the landowner gets so sick and tired of everybody else running rampant over the road that he puts up a locked gate. If he were able to have an unlocked gate before it got to be such a problem, then maybe he wouldn't have the anger to want to lock it. So, and I also looked at the history of gates and bars, and it goes way, way back in the statutes. And it has worked. It worked for years. And then in, I think it was 1977, they inserted the clause that said that gates could be removed off of abandoned roads. I've got it here someplace.
Roberta, just a quick question. When you say unlock gate, are you saying allow a gate to go up that's just people have to get out to go open? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it would be a nuisance if it was shut all the time, but if there were a gate there, then the person who's interested in having the gate could close it, say when the road is muddy, or when there's a legitimate reason for having it shut. And the rest of the time, if they wanted to leave it open, they could. But it'd be up to them, kind of weighing the inconvenience of having to get out and open the gate against the convenience of not having everybody else use it.
My only question to that would be who's got the responsibility and who's the one that would be the gatekeeper? Because if it's the public interest to get in there, is it going to be the town that's going to be the one that shuts it down, or is it going to be the landowner that owns both sides? Because then you're going to have the same issue.
Yeah, I don't think the town's going to have any interest in being the gatekeeper.
Well, if that's the case, then if the landowner is willing to take on that responsibility, he'd probably be happy to take on the responsibility, actually.
I just think that would be we'd still be in the same situation because the landowner would restrict access.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be completely stopping access. It'd just be slowing it down because the gate would be unlocked.
Well, I know, but I'm saying in this situation, the landowner is the one that put the gate up to keep people out.
Yes, but he wouldn't be able to lock it. The big problem is when somebody locks the gate and keeps everybody out when there's supposed to be a public easement. And by the way, I just checked, it wasn't until 1991 that the possibility of gates and bars was removed from the statute.
When was it, Roberta?
1991, they changed the abandonment law to say removal of obstructions. If the municipal officers have determined under subsection 2 that the way is a townway or public easement, then, just kind of summarizing it, then the municipal officers may remove any gates or bars or other obstructions in the way.
So to the point of our work, though, do we need to give you any direction, Jim, to talk about 928?
Yes. I'm not going to go out there and freelance it. Does the commission have a? It sounds like this was initially proposed to solve a problem that has been resolved.
This one, yeah, but I think, it's going to happen elsewhere. And I know there's differences of opinions amongst us because 3 of us testified on this bill as representing our own interests. And I don't think we were in agreement there. So I think that if we want to try to have consensus of this group, I think Roberta had testified neither for nor against, if I remember correctly. Maybe that's what we should propose here, is that this commission, if we're going to provide information, it would be along the vein of neither for nor against, and just give the information that Roberta basically already gave them in her testimony.
I think I'd go one step beyond that and maybe see if we can come up with an amendment that makes more sense, because the 15 years really doesn't make any sense at all.
And maybe I'm not arguing that at all, Roberta. I'm just saying, I don't think we would be in a position as a committee to vote in favor or against this bill. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think that might be missing an opportunity that we have to try to get something better done with it. I mean, it's before the commission, before the state and local committee now. That gives them the opportunity to propose whatever amendments they want.
But what I'm saying is we do that, like you're suggesting, but our position on the bill is just, here's some information to consider as an amendment, but we as a commission are just here neither for nor against, but here's our thoughts and suggestions to you.
It's a possibility.
Otherwise, we're there to say we support LD 928 as amended. And I don't know if we have all of us in agreement on that, and we won't. And we've already agreed that we have to be unanimous in our decision before we go forward in front of a committee. But
Well, let's think about this one for a minute. If you take a look at this, this isn't all a new statute. This is an amendment to an existing law. And this is with regard to abandonment. So what it says right now is, if the municipal officers or the county commissioners have declared a townway of discontinued by abandonment, so 30 consecutive years non-municipal expense maintaining the road, and have retained a public easement under this section, the municipality, county commissioners, or an abutter on the way, acting with the written permission of the municipal officers or county commissioners, may remove any gates, bars, or other obstructions in the townway. So if the guy from Massachusetts, just to pick on Massachusetts for a minute, owns land on both sides of the road and puts a gate or bar against it, you don't have to wait 15 years right now. You can go to the town hall or to Ryan's office and say, well, will the county commissioners please give me permission to remove the bar, because this is a public easement. You don't have to wait 15 years. You could do that the week it happens under the existing law right now, if that public easement came about because the road was presumed abandoned. So the existing law actually works pretty well, or it gives authority if the municipality or the county is willing to back it up. Maybe that's where the problem is. Mm-hmm. And in the Sangerville instance, where nobody's really quite sure, is this a county way? Was it discontinued by the county? Was it taken over by the town? Is it still a town way? Was it discontinued? What is it? Nobody knows. This gates and bars provision only applies to public easements that result because of a discontinuance by abandonment, because it is only in that statute. So it isn't available for the bigger picture of all other public easements that might happen because of discontinuance, where there's an affirmative action by the town to discontinue a road. It comes about only in those narrow areas where it's discontinued by abandonment because the town didn't spend money for at least 30 consecutive years to maintain the road. So I think that if this goes forward, just leave the law the way it is, and maybe you could do the same sort of thing for all other discontinuances. You could amend 3026A to include it. Yes. You know, and say that the municipalities would have authority for public easements there. That might help. I don't know. So, Margaret, you'll have your chance to comment. I when it's time. Sorry. But you see what I'm. That's my thought looking at it. What do you folks think?
My thought is where it says I may remove gates, how about if we change that to say may erect unlocked gates? And then took out the rest of it.
I think the whole problem here is that people are putting up gates with locked or unlocked, and that's what's frustrating everyone. Because there are a bunch of landowners who are trying to prevent access, and even putting an unlocked gate up is sort of an act of a symbolic act, if nothing else, that I don't want you over my property.
Well, if you think about it, though, requiring the removal of the gate is by people who don't maintain the road, telling the people who do maintain the road, you can't stop us.
Well, suppose it's somebody who does maintain it's someone who maintains the road, but the gate is put up after your property and you can't get through. Or it's put up before your property and you can't get to your house.
That's why it has to be an unlocked gate. I admit it would be a nuisance, but it's a nuisance to have people tearing up the road.
What do you all think?
I guess as the snowmobile and ATV representative, I struggle with a gate. It may be permission to use it, but for each rider to get out and open it and close it and kind of move along would be inefficient, especially for the groomer. If that's, I know that doesn't always apply because not all of it is trail, but that would complicate things.
So it would complicate it for the ATV rider also.
Yeah. I go under if you don't know, don't go. Well, when you get to the gate, boy, that would change the whole thing. But one of the problems that really has become huge, I guess, most manufacturers are now putting GPS maps and screens on their sleds and ATVs. If you're following a GPS track, saying this is where the trail goes, and you come across the gate, boy, it struggles on what you make for a decision.
Mm-hmm. And how fast are these snowmobiles and ATVs going down the roads?
Could be 100.
Sadly.
Could be 20, could be 100, could be 60.
Yeah.
The reality is that we from our landowner relations perspective, like we provide landowners with gates quite frequently. A lot of times for seasonal use that they have, but I think the problem I see with this would be like we wouldn't provide a gate to a landowner that there was other camp owners or other people had access beyond them. We just wouldn't do that because we wouldn't want to. I feel like it opens up the restriction for people. I think seasonal gates are great. I don't disagree with that. I think that saves roadways and stuff. But if it's not a group that is actually maintaining that like gate, if you give the key to one person, I think that's a problem.
Well, I'm just thinking, I've never ridden a snowmobile. Okay, I've been in an ATV, I've ridden a motorcycle, but I don't know what it would be like if somebody decides to put a piece of white PVC pipe across a way and call it a gate. And it might be movable, it might be unlocked, but if I'm going 100 on a snowmobile and whited out, or there's snow in the background, I'm not going to see that.
It happens a lot.
Ryan, where are you at on this? You testified. What did you have to say on this?
Well, I testified as a resident of a public easement, and I guess my position on it's was a little different. I don't like the thought of a gate. My testimony was in opposition because I like the idea that if at a certain point in time, landowners, and I speak as a group of landowners, not a landowner, I want to make that clear, say, hey, we need to block access for a while because there's damages being done. We'd put up a gate temporarily. It would come down at some point. That I'm in favor of. I can't think of, it's hard because where I live, we don't have the issues that, with snowmobiles and a few ATVs once in a while, maybe, but no snowmobiles really, except for people that have them themselves on the property, on the road that we live on. But we don't have like general public coming there on a snowmobile. So I see it more as a springtime issue myself, not a winter issue.
Didn't we, though, propose something to address springtime issues with these by having road closures?
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about specific to this.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
What we could say is, one, this affects a very narrow scope of public easements. Only those public easements that result from discontinuance under the statute. It doesn't deal with those that are when the road is discontinued. So it's only a subset of public easements. And if you're trying to protect the road by putting up these gates, that's the reason for it. And if that's a legitimate reason, we proposed legislation that would allow a municipality to post all public easements, along with roads, for seasonal type of issues. And wouldn't that be the better way to go about it?
The problem with that is that the posting is only for heavy trucks. And a lot of the problem isn't heavy trucks, it's people with four-wheel drive pickup trucks who want to go out mud running during the spring. And they're the ones that do the real damage. Yes, it would be helpful to keep the heavy trucks off it as well, but that's not going to catch all the people that are the problem. If it stops loggers from using it during the spring, the loggers aren't going to like that, but that's part of being a logger, is you kind of have to expect that roads are going to be posted in the spring. And the posting needs to stay up a little longer on these dirt roads because they're just not built to sustain the weight, and it takes them longer to dry out because they're often shaded because they're not trimmed way back. But we still have the problem with the four-wheel drive mud runners.
But I'll say that if the posting of the public ordinance is based, the public easement is based in a local traffic ordinance, it's not necessarily just aimed at heavy trucks. You can aim it at whatever you want to. But how do you define mud runners? How do you even enforce that sort of thing?
That's the problem. You could put together a posting ordinance that might have different standards for graveled roads than for paved roads, for example. Because those might be a little more susceptible to damage from the logging trucks, the ATVs, the four-wheel drives. That's why we were going to craft a sample ordinance in our spare time for municipalities to consider if that posting law went through, so that we could have some options out there for towns. We could work with MMA to do that sort of thing. Okay, I was just throwing it out as an option to the gating because, again, this LD 928 only looks at a few public easements, a percentage of them, not all of them. And gating, some folks are okay with it if it's an unlocked gate, some are not. Some would prefer some kind of seasonal gating, perhaps. I'm not sensing we're all on board here.
I think we're all on board with saying it shouldn't go forward as is because it's kind of pointless.
Right.
But the question is whether we offer an amendment to do something useful.
Chris, could the ATV saturated soils be broadened on abandoned roads to keep traffic out?
I don't think so. I mean, the problem is the reality, and no one probably wants to hear this, but I mean, the camp owner that has a camping on that road would cause just as much damage going in the springtime during that limited time. So should we hold them responsible for what they did for damage if the public has a right to go through there too? I mean, I know that's not what Roberta wants to hear, but the reality is that's the truth. It's just like Ryan said, it's such a narrow focus of the time frame when this is really occurring that really everybody that's going in there has to take responsibility for it.
Isn't putting up a gate seasonally to protect the road really the same as posting it, except you get a physical barrier?
Yep.
And if you were Ryan, if you were being asked, can we put this gate up? The commissioners posted this road. Can we put this gate up? You probably would say, well, the posting is enough. If someone breaks that, goes over that, then we can fine them as a violation. I don't think we want to also put up a gate that doesn't necessarily authorize us to put up a gate.
Yeah. On a road that's a public easement road.
Yeah, that's right, where the public has the right of access.
That's why we don't have any.
I know of one large landowner that they gate all of their property and they close it for the springtime, and they are very successful at keeping their roads. But I don't know of any, like Ryan said, there's nobody else that does that.
Well, Chris, those are all private roads.
Right. I'm just saying, like he was saying that there are no gates, they don't have any, and that's why. Like,
so I think it's fair to say that we think that the bill isn't necessary anymore, and that's something I could imagine the sponsor would just take a leave to withdraw because the underlying problem has been fixed. But to the extent that it remains on the table, I don't think we support it because adding the 15 years just makes what's potentially useful not useful. Because right now in year one, I can go in and try to get an order from the county commissioners or from the select board or the town council to have a gate removed that's blocking access because it's a public easement. So
even if the town hadn't voted to solve the problem, I don't think this bill would have solved the problem at all.
right. Yeah, delays resolution for 15 years. You have to put up with the gate, or if it's less than 15 years, go get their written permission. It doesn't make sense. There's no magic in that 15-year period.
So is the public hearing already held on this? Did I hear?
Yeah, they're going to be looking to us for our opinion on it, and so.
So work session hasn't happened?
That's going to.
They have not had the work session on it yet.
Did anyone, who was for and who was against and who was neither for nor?
Like Tom Doak testified, I think opposed, wasn't he, Roberta?
Yes, he was.
And then Roberta was neither for nor against, and I testified in opposition. And I don't know if there was any other groups though, any other organizations. I can't remember.
was there anybody in favor, Ryan? There was other than the.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There were residents, people there, general public that testified in favor.
Yeah. There were two residents testified in favor.
Yeah. Hunters. They were hunters that used to use the town land that's in the back to hunt on, and with the gate there, they can't get there anymore. That's what makes it a little complicated. Is the town actually owns a piece of land on this road beyond where the gate is. I was just surprised that the recommendation was just take it by eminent domain. That seems like a costly proposition to me, but Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, they figured the alternative was that they were going to end up in court, and that would cost a whole lot more. And when they calculated the value of the land per acre, they figured it was about 3 acres. So even at $2,000 per acre, that would be about $6,000. And
Yeah.
getting an attorney to take it all the way through court is going to cost a whole lot more than that.
Well, I get that. I get that based on the 2,000 number, but that 2,000 number is coming from whom? Who's coming up with that number?
I'm not sure if they had an appraiser look at it or if they're just looking at comparable values in the area. For the kind of land it is, I think that's probably a pretty reasonable figure.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing to consider on all this too is if you were the town and you were going to try to go to court for a declaratory judgment action to figure out who has what rights, what are the legal rights and responsibilities, where there are varying stories of whether this is a county way, whether it's discontinued, whether it's a town way. And it was done in the 30s, as far back. The paper speaks for itself, but just try and find any witnesses, old road commissioners or people like that. Good luck. These are fact-specific cases, and that could eat up a lot of money and time. So I could see throwing some money on the table to, just say, whatever it is, we got a right, we're taking it. I think it kind of makes sense. All right, so we're going to be asked what we think as a commission about this bill. And several members of this commission have in their individual capacities testified against this bill, or Tom Doak on behalf of this association, Ryan personally, Roberta personally. Pete, did you have anything to say on this? Or okay, anyone else speak for or against, or neither for nor against? All right. It seems like what I'm hearing, the consensus is that this is not a good idea, what's being proposed. It may not even be necessary now, but the idea of making this more complicated by this 15-year breakpoint that seems to have no reason, that doesn't help anything. There's an ability of the municipal officers or the county commissioners to exercise control over these public easements anyway to protect the public's right of access. And so we could let that be. Just let the current statute stand. If people are concerned about what damage can be done to one of these public easements seasonally, we have proposed legislation that would allow municipalities to post these and all other kinds of public easements. And then there are commission members who might perhaps go a little further. And Roberta has, your idea. And Ryan?
Just wanted to let you know, I just went and looked at the bill, and MMA did testify, and their recommendation was to turn it to us to deal with.
Yeah, well, I did get the comment from Rebecca earlier, though, that where does this come from was my question, and her thought on the 15 years is that somebody was probably trying to make it like an adverse possession type of thing, where it's 20 years to adversely possess land or an easement by prescription. They were trying to establish the 15. There's no magic to that number, and we all kind of recognize that. So, all right. So I think what I can do is say on behalf that we don't like the language that's proposed. Do you want me to get up as, well, neither for nor against, but the consensus is that we don't like the language that's proposed. We have something that we have proposed that might address the underlying problem of access, protecting roads by being able to seasonally post these roads. Other individual commissioners might have some other ideas, and at that point, Roberta, you're free to pop up and talk about the idea of the unlocked gate. But that, I don't sense that as having a lot of traction on this commission as a commission position. Am I right? I'm looking at the nodding heads. Okay. Thoughts, comments?
So Jim, because it's the upcoming work session, did I hear you say that you've been asked to speak on behalf of this commission?
I've been asked to stick around and talk about LD 928, and I assume it would be as chair of this commission. So that's why I'm trying to determine what I'm allowed to say on behalf of the commission.
Okay.
I believe what's happening is that what's coming up next week is our presentation of the Ad Hoc annual report. And then they've kind of tacked this bill onto the end of it. So that's not actually the work session on the bill, I don't believe. But they probably take the information from there and then go to work session.
Yeah. So whether it's a work session or something that they will consider when they're in work session, we're going to be asked for this. Brian?
So I just, my testimony was on behalf of myself, not the organization that I'm here. So I don't want my testimony, I don't want my personal opinion to be considered part of the decision here.
Understood.
But you did have MMA, the Maine County Commissioners, Tom and his organization, and Roberta and her organization. Those four testified, and they have written testimony that I think you probably should at least look at. And maybe from those four testimonies, you could draw some commonalities that you could maybe offer as information back to the committee on behalf of our association, on behalf of our commission.
Okay.
I read them, and I don't think we're that far off, to be honest with you. I think we just need it tweaked a little bit so that it makes sense for everybody. But everybody that testified, or either the neither for nor against people, all said the same thing. It really needs to be something that this commission should be looking at. I don't know, maybe I'm making it more complicated.
No, that's fine. And I haven't checked, so I don't know whether those bits of testimony, there would have been something written, I assume, filed.
They're all right online. If you go do
Perfect. I'll go look at those.
You'll see all 12 testimonies submitted there.
I will review all that, and what I'll do is I'll put together my talking points, and I'll send that to all of you by email. And if anybody disagrees, you'll let me know. Okay?
So in other words, what you're saying, Jim and Ryan, is that we're not taking a vote here. We're not coming up with anything like that. We're just doing what Ryan's suggesting, is to review everything that's been written, and that this is generally how we all feel. Knowing that there may be one or two that personally oppose it. But we don't need to say that.
Can I ask a question? Because I don't have the audio. Is this how you this is how you got to the neither for nor against? Because you don't want to kill the bill, but you want it to be brought over to this commission in order to explore the possibility. Is that what I'm hearing? Because in a normal situation down there, if you go up and you testify neither for nor against, it's either going to go yes or no. It's not, so if you really don't want this to pass, then what we normally do is take a stance, like oppose it completely. But if you want to refer it back to this commission, then a neither for nor against would do it, as long as you specify that you think it should come back to this commission.
Which is what I think all four of the people on this commission that testified on behalf of their associations all said that. They all said, Roberta, I think you did too, didn't you, that it should be reviewed by this commission?
I can't remember whether I did or not, but I would agree with that.
What did Roberta just say? Because I guess I didn't hear. You don't agree with it coming back to this commission, or?
No, I do agree with it coming back to the commission. I can't remember whether I said that to the state and local committee. I think I may have said something along the lines of, I assume that it would be referred to the commission.
Mm-hmm.
And rejoinder from the legislative committee might be, and what would you guys do with it? What would the commission do with that if it came back to you?
Well, for one thing, get rid of the 15 years because that doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay.
Discuss whether gates should be allowed, and if so, under what circumstances, what limits there might be on the gates, unlocked gates during certain seasons, visible, whatever.
Is it fair to say that the commission doesn't support it as written because the 15 years makes no sense?
Right.
Does anybody disagree with that statement?
And if you look at the testimony, that's consistent with what MMA said,
Yep.
what the county commissioner said, and I think Mr. Doak, but I don't want to say that for sure.
I believe you did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he did.
I'm going to go. I'll speak to them and say we've discussed it. We don't support the 15 years that appears in it, that there's no basis for it that we can think of. That the existing law, as it is for this type of public easement, seems to be sufficient to allow the county commissioners and the municipal officers to remove these. Whether it's wise to remove those, whether there are other options, we've proposed posting roads seasonally, all public easements. We note that those who spoke against this legislation suggested sending it back to this commission, and we would support that.
Mhm.
I'll review all of those pieces of testimony, Ryan. But if that works, do you want to take a vote on that as a motion for direction for me to, and then I'll give you the talking points beforehand so we can fine tune those.
I'll move the chair's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Heather, the roll.
Peter,
Yeah.
Tom is absent, Rebecca is absent, and Joe is absent. Jim,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Vivian is absent. John,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve. Yes, thumbs up. Okay, yes.
Okay. All right. Next item on our agenda then, if we're done with LD 928, and I think we've probably driven that one into the ground, other legislation. I'm going to suggest that we might want to take a look at what Roberta sent out to us today about a new bill that was LD 1562. And what this, okay, well, let me first explain. If I have a problem with the way that a town road is being maintained, I don't think it's being maintained what the law requires, which is safe and convenient for passage by motor vehicle, then 3 or more people living on that road or owning property on that road can go to the county commissioners and ask the county commissioners to meet, have a hearing, and order the town to do what it's supposed to do. Ryan's seen some of these before. When I was practicing, when I first started practicing, I got a call that there was a hearing the next day before the Androscoggin County Commissioners, the town of Livermore, saying, "Jim, would you please represent us? The road's been discontinued. We're being ordered to maintain it." So I went before the county commissioners, and Androscoggin County Commissioner Chair Emil Jakes looked at me and said, "Mr. Katsafikas, I understand you have an argument, but we're the people's court, and I'm ordering the town to maintain the road." And he did, until the court reversed the decision, a decision in which then District Attorney Janet Mills desperately tried to intervene, but she had not filed any paperwork, and I had to say to the governor, "You can't be part of this proceeding." It was a very interesting few days working on all of that. So at any rate, there's a route right now. If you see that a townway is not being maintained, you can go to the county commissioners, you can bring the petition, they can hold a hearing, and they can order the town to maintain it. I've even seen the county go out and hire people to maintain the road and send the town the bill when the town still refused to do it. Brian, you have some more stories like that?
The issue we have with it is we find it a little silly up here because, in our case, I have a retired hospital administrator as a commissioner, a retired school superintendent, and a carpenter, retired carpenter. They're all retired, by the way. But none of them have any knowledge, expertise on road maintenance, road construction, road plowing, road anything. And they just laugh every time we get these, like, oh, yeah, okay, well, who's going to be the expert at this meeting, because so we end up spending money, resources to have either an engineer or someone with a public works background that's not affiliated with the town go out there and look at it. Luckily for us, we've had someone here that's works for our unorganized territory that takes care of road stuff for us. So we've relied on him in the past. He retired recently, so now I'm back to contracting that out if I get these. But I wouldn't mind seeing this go away as far as the commissioner's role in it altogether, but that is very highly unlikely, I think, given everything else that is in this bill. So I don't think this bill stands much of a chance.
No, I don't either. But what this bill does is it says that instead of having this decided by the commissioners, first of all, the standards of what is safe and convenient would be established by the Department of Transportation. Right now, each town establishes its own road standards as far as how you build a road and has its maintenance schedule. So instead, the Maine Department of Transportation would determine what safe and convenient means, and those standards have to include a petition process if a town liable to maintain a road fails to do so. Now, whether that would continue, it doesn't say where those would go, it's just that the process would have to be established by the Maine Department of Transportation.
It's interesting, Jim, but to be fair here, I don't think this bill is something that this commission needs to be thinking about anyway. It's not abandoned.
I think you're right. We're not talking about abandoned or discontinued roads at this point. So just an interesting point, but there you go. You can see some of the details and some of the issues and some of the concerns in that. It will go down in flames on its own, and even if we had any role in it. But just thank you for sharing that, Roberta. One thing, though, to go back on LD 928 for just a minute, because I didn't get to it. I wanted to discuss it for just a minute. When Roberta shared that information with us, you may have seen with that the records of the Penobscot County commissioners. And you can see what road layouts looked like. The hand scrawling. That's what we have to look for when we're trying to find out road histories. So, it would be nice if everything were cut and dried, if everything were in 12-point times New Roman and we could read it. What it is, it's a lot of these roads, these old roads in Maine, when we're talking about discontinuance and abandonment, when were they laid out, when were they discontinued, the records look like this. And they talk about, the road leading to John Smith's farm, ending at the elm tree. This stuff happened 150 years ago or 100 years ago. So that's what we're working in when we're talking about abandoned and discontinued roads. That's part of the environment we're working in all of this, and that's what makes it so difficult, so fact specific, and so open to contention. You've got those records up in your county too, right, Ryan?
What I do when somebody sends me one of these roads and says, is it discontinued or not? Usually the first thing I do is I look at the DOT map viewer to see if it was ever a county road. And even if it wasn't listed on the map viewer as a county road, then the next thing I do is I've got a copy of the index that the DOT made up years ago of all the road records they could find. And I'll look to see if there are any not located roads. And those are the ones that, as you say, they go from John Smith's barn to the big oak stump. And who knows where that was. But I'll ask them to send me a copy of those not located roads. And some of them, I may be looking for a road that goes north-south, and there's some that I can eliminate because they go east-west. Well, that's not the road. Some of them will say it goes past such and such pond. Well, that's in the wrong part of town. That's not the road. It crosses the town line into such and such town. No, that's not the right road. And then I get down to one where, well, wait a minute, this one goes the right direction. And it's such a short piece of road that when the DOT tried to map it out from the distances and degree readings, it was, it came out on their scale as being about a half an inch long, and you just can't match that to anything. But I can trace it out on a much bigger scale and find take Google Earth and blow it up to the same scale, and then say, well, wait a minute, it mentions so-and-so's farm, and if you trace the deeds back, you can find where the current owner's chain of title goes back to that same person. And sometimes I can actually find where those not located roads were. But it takes a bunch of time. It's not an easy process. And as you said, the handwriting, sometimes it's very readable, sometimes it isn't. What I found is even worse was sometimes town records were preserved on a copying machine where the ink faded after a few years. So even things in the 1960s, you pull up the record and it's almost a blank page. You can't read it at all.
Or some of it's preserved on microfiche. Go find a microfiche reader these days. So, all right. There's another bill that came out, LD 994. It was brought to my attention. This is with regard to private road maintenance, and it's that statute that was enacted a few years back with regard to private roads, and even if you don't have a private road association, you can try to get money back from your neighbors for maintaining a private road. I would say that that's nice. It's private roads. We've talked about private roads, but we've talked about private roads only in the sense of trying to distinguish them from private ways. And our real jurisdiction and authority is with regard to abandoned and discontinued roads and the leftovers from those. We don't have to go down the private road path. And probably LD 994, while interesting, is not something we should be thinking about.
The problem that I see with that is that 994, I believe, was the one that amended Section 3121.
Correct.
And the problem with 3121, when that was first being passed, they were going to say that it applied to private roads and private ways. And I said, do not put private ways in there, because then you're going to open a whole can of worms of abandoned and discontinued roads. And you cannot force people to maintain them through a road association because they're public roads. And then you're taking private funds to maintain a public road. And they changed it so that the first line just says private roads. And I thought, great, they fixed it. Well, they didn't fix it well enough, because I now have 5 as of last weekend cases where someone was told in their real estate disclosure as they were buying a piece of property, they were told that this is a private road with maintenance shared by the abutters. And it's not. It's a discontinued road that was discontinued with no easement. And 4 of these, after they purchased the property, they found out that they had no access. The 5th one, fortunately, her title insurer was a little bit sharper than some of the others, or maybe they're beginning to wake up. 3 days before they were supposed to close on it, the title insurer called her up and said, do not buy that property unless you first get a survey and get deeded access from all of the other butters, because that road was discontinued. And she had no idea what that meant. So she said she went online and looked up what's a discontinued road in Maine, and she ended up on my website. This was before we had met. And she said, I told her, oh, you should have looked up my website. And she said, well, that's what I did. I Googled discontinued roads and I end up on your website. And that's why we decided not to buy it. So at least I saved somebody from that fate. But this is happening more and more. And I wish we could fix 3121 so that it makes it really clear that it does not apply to abandoned and discontinued roads.
Any other thoughts on legislation that's out there that we might be bumping into or asked to talk about?
I mean, not specifically, but one thing that did come up during the hearing at 928 is, and it was raised by some people that testified, and I think Will Toole is back on state and local, and so he remembers us. Nobody else does.
No, there's a few, Randy Greenwood.
Well, I'm just saying in
But,
general, there's not many is my point. And the thing is, like, a lot of them, I think that we should just be magically getting all these bills somehow to us. And we're just relying on people stumbling on them and sending them our way, like Roberta obviously does a lot of that. And there's no mechanism, right, for us to be sent bills other than we find them, just like anybody else.
No, maybe we should be working with the committee assistant or the legislative analyst to work with the committee so that when the committee has questions or a bill comes in that the legislative analyst thinks we might contribute to, we could be asked through that, and then maybe that's something I have to talk about informally next week.
Maybe that's a good idea, because I think, it doesn't make, obviously they're not going to do this for all the associations out there that, want to weigh in one way or the other, but we are supposedly created, we're created by them. So
Right.
should be some acknowledgement that we shouldn't be out here trying to guess which bills we should be looking at or not.
Fair enough.
They actually asked me about that when I was speaking to them. They said, we assume you get notified of these bills? And I said, no, we won't. We don't get it until it comes to your committee, and then you refer it to us. And I said, I try to keep an eye out for them, and sometimes I catch them, but sometimes I don't. And, I'm not being paid to look for them. So I think they are now at least somewhat aware that if they want us to look at stuff before it comes to the committee, that there's got to be some way to let us know.
Yeah, I can provide that as a reminder next week when I'm in front of them. So that's my talking points.
But that could be state and local and transportation.
That's true.
And occasionally judiciary.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, were you on state and local when we were created?
No, I was on state and local many centuries ago, so no.
All right. Okay, so I think that concludes the legislation portion of our show. Other business. We talked about members' terms expiring, and I was appointed in October 3 years ago, and appointed as the attorney member. And I am an attorney, and I will be through the end of the year. But at the end of the year, I will be retiring. And so I will no longer be able to hold that seat. So it doesn't make sense for me to be seeking to renew because I can't do the job. So you will need to find another attorney member to take that position, or someone's going to need to find another attorney member to take the position and provide that perspective for the commission. So I'm giving you a heads up that certainly I'll see my work through to October, but that's when my term expires.
Gee, can we petition the state and local committee to change the wording to say an attorney or former attorney?
Recovering attorney. No, well, you need someone who's in current practice to work with you. And so I think that makes sense. The question is finding somebody, with some road law background who can help you out.
Is there anybody?
Well, there are a bunch of municipal attorneys who do this as part of their practice. Whether they have the bandwidth to also take on being a member of the commission, I don't know, or the interest. I could ask. There's a municipal attorneys group that meets every other month, and MMA helps administer that. And I could put out a feeler just to see if anyone would be interested in serving, if that would help you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Frankly, I don't know very many real estate attorneys or any attorneys for that matter who know a whole lot about abandoned and discontinued roads. And if there are some out there, I'd love to know who they are.
Well, I know one, but he represents private property owners, so that doesn't help. His law firm wouldn't let him do this, I think. Steve, you had your hand up? Yeah. Not coming through. Sorry, not.
His phone and his video are muted if that, maybe
Yeah,
he's
I don't know if he can unmute though. I think can you hear? Yeah, it's not coming through.
Hold up a sign, Steve.
You can email me after or during, and I'll.
Put it in the chat, Steve. Yeah. Just saying that you will be hard to replace.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but
set the bar high.
well, thanks, but we'll find someone, and you'll get your work done. So I'll start the ball rolling on that. Check with the real estate section too, and see if somebody's interested from that perspective. So any other business for today?
I believe John Cunningham is also retiring or getting ready to retire.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. He and I are about the same age.
And Knut Hermanson, I believe, is already retired.
So there go the three likely suspects. But there are other people who know about roads, so we'll have to get the new generation involved.
I know Mary in Winthrop, but she's
Mary Dennison?
yeah, she's just overloaded with stuff and
Mhm.
she wouldn't do it.
Well, we'll fish around and see if some people might be finding time and inclination to do that.
Roberta, see if you can get the pay a little better. Maybe we can get a good attorney.
What was that?
Get a little bit better pay for the attorney, you know.
Jim, do you know who else's term is up?
Well, I don't. I think Heather might have those records.
So it would be Peter, it'd be Rebecca, it'd be Chris, Roberta, Vivian, John, Kathy, Ryan, and Steve is what I had, because I haven't gotten reappointment letters for you guys yet.
So we're all up for reappointment?
Yeah, because it's a 3-year term. So I guess you guys were appointed August 2022, is that right? That's what I have for records.
That was the beginning of the committee, is the way I understood it.
Right.
Yep.
And they
Beginning.
weren't staggered terms.
Yeah, so you guys all came on at the same time. So that's what I had written down in my notes, that it's August of this year, right? Because 23, 24, 25. So, but I know, and I'm happy to reach out on behalf of the people who appointed you too, to say, you know, we need to get a renewal or a new, I'm hoping all of you come back because you all know so much, Roberta, and I can reach out and coordinate that. That's not a problem. And then those of you who are represented by like Chris and stuff, I would just need something from your commissioner, yeah, saying that they're reappointing you.
So is that something we initiate or you're gonna somehow connect?
I can connect to your commissioner, Peter and Chris, if you want, and just say Bannon Roads, but you might want to give them the heads up because I know that we're very small.
Right.
So sometimes we're not really on a lot of people's radar. So
I'll let the commissioners know.
thanks.
Brian?
I will too.
I kind of thought that I had been appointed, so I just went through my records here and I can send this to you, but I got a letter on August 8th, 2024,
Oh, okay.
saying that I had been reappointed effective August 10th, and that I will continue to serve as a member of a statewide association representing county government. That was a letter signed by the Speaker of the House.
Wow.
Okay.
A lifetime appointment, Ryan.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people copied on this, but I see now that your office was not.
Yeah. You know, because I don't need the records for the Secretary of State or anything. I mean, I don't run the commission at all. Like, I have no need for records.
I had
I'm
like
not the record
12
keeper.
There's like 12 people that were copied on this letter. I'll Scan it. and
For
send it to me.
yeah, and I'll take a look at it because I think what was written in was everybody was for I think it's 3-year terms, but if they reappointed you in 2024, you should be good
Whatever.
to 2027. So we
Yeah.
should be all set then. But I don't need it. It's fine.
You know, with the lifetime appointment here, okay? I'm like a dedimus justice.
Okay, so we'll work with Heather to make sure everybody who can be reappointed and wants to be reappointed will be reappointed. And so that's good. Any other comments or other business for today before we get to public comment? All right. Well, it's time for public comment, and I see Ms. Cardoza has been waiting patiently for us to get to this point, and we'll turn the floor over to you. The only thing we ask is that we try to be concise on public comment, and but I know you will be, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm glad what you're planning to do for 928, LD 928. That 15-year thing really threw me off. It's already chaotic trying to figure out what's the 20-year for this and what's a 30-year for that. So it is very distracting. I don't know if anyone else was there as much as when I was listening to this public hearing, the legislator, a town councilor or somebody was speaking up about the financial burden to the municipality, as well as the other individuals who spoke in favor, was, concerned about all their, quote, tax money going into legal fees in dealing with these obstructions. Thereby, that statement makes it very loud and clear that municipalities are struggling dealing with any of these issues about the access on these public easements. And I'm very concerned that your representative of MMA has been pretty holding the ground on assuring municipalities not to have to pay a dime on repairing any of these roads, when in fact they're having to pay so much legal fees at dealing with these cases, that there is a real significant conflict between what municipalities are trying to say is a problem with these road obstructions, whereas the association is stating the opposite, that they just don't want the municipalities to pay a dime. They are paying a dime. So I would hope that this commission would dig in deeper for some kind of concession between the Maine Municipal Association, municipalities in general, as well as individuals on roads on these issues of obstruction. I heard that loud and clear, and I would have hoped you all might have noticed that as well. Our road association has just basically lost a court case because of road obstructions that property owners have put in the road. We've had car accidents. We've had plow trucks blowing out tires. And of course, I'm from Wyndham, which means it's the town plow trucks that the tires are getting blown out because of these obstructions. This item of 7 928 is a very serious issue, and there's definitely a need to find some kind of compromise, particularly if it's a public easement, on resolving it. Whereas what's confusing, and how to address the issues where there are landlocks. And it sounds like there was a landlock on this property where they couldn't get access to their hunting or fishing or whatever situations. So I would hope the commission will take a look in the future about these obstructions, because municipalities are struggling with it. And so are we as an association that deals with the public, to find some kind of compromise. And then finally, another option of consideration, if I may, is, and I know Roberta has brought this up on quite, if not on occasions, that the judicial system give a report, if not to the commission, to the state and local government, whatever their requirements or procedures on doing that, on this discussion about the confusions between this issue of public easements, for the sake of this commission alone, might help resolve a lot of the problems. I really do think the judicial system really needs to provide some assistance in this, so that maybe the commission might look forward to concluding, because it's all resolved. Just dream on. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your comments, and I think you'll see as we move forward on LD 928, if it's sent back by the legislature, by state and local to us, we'll be discussing this further. So thank you very much. And with that, anything else from the commission members today? Heather, thanks as always for organizing us and keeping us on task. With that, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Don't do a roll call. Just raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And you'll be seeing my comments and talking points, and I'll welcome any responses you folks have, so we get ready for next Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Okay, bye.